Yep.
Hello, welcome to the meeting of the Windsor Forum on Wednesday, the 8th of May. My name is Councillor Alison Carpenter and I'll be chairing this meeting. This meeting is being held in person and via Zoom and streamed live to the public on YouTube. I remind all attendees that participation in the meeting indicates consent to the audio and video being streamed live and acknowledgement that after the meeting it will continue to be available in the public domain. Firstly, it would be useful if the panel members and officers could introduce themselves so that the public are aware of who is in the meeting and the role that they are undertaking. As I said, I'm Councillor Carpenter and I will now pass over to the Vice Chair. Thank you.
Good evening, I'm Councillor Amy Teasey. I'm the lead member for Windsor and I'm Vice Chair of the
Councillor Mark Wilson, member of the panel.
Thank you. I request that meeting participants do not speak unless I specifically invite you to do so. Once I've invited you to speak, before you do so, please state your name and the capacity in which you are speaking if appropriate, so i.e. a resident. I will also ask officers to speak at appropriate times. If any individual attempts to disrupt the meeting, I'm able to use my powers in the Constitution to adjourn the meeting or have the individual removed. We will now start on the agenda items. So do we have any apologies for absence?
Yes, yeah. I've only received one from Councillor Wisdom da Costa. I haven't received a substitute from him. Okay, and I know that Councillor Knowles is unable to make the meeting as well, so we can make a note of that. That would be great. Thank you. Okay, so do we have any declarations of interest for this meeting that we need to declare? Thank you. So we're now going to look at the minutes from the last meeting, and do we consider these to be a true and accurate record of the meeting from the last meeting? There are a few outstanding actions that we can go through as well. The first one is for Paul Roach, so we'll maybe ask him when he comes on to give us his town centre manager review. We can ask him about the lantern lights in Windsor. I don't think there's too many actually on here, so we've had an answer about Chris Joyce answered about the drains as well, so we've got an answer about the drains being maintained, and that was an action from the last meeting as well, so we'll add that to this, yeah, I'm not sure. I have to check with Chris Joyce. Do we know if he's received contact details from the Windsor Society? Yeah. Okay, perfect. Councillor Teasey's confirmed that that's taken place. So I think we're good on the minutes. So are we happy that they're okay? So I'm now going to hand over to Amanda Quincy, who has joined us from GoodGym. As you know, we like to bring in local community organisations to give us a short presentation on what they do and how they can help in our community. So Amanda, I'll hand over to you. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Just wait for the slides to come up. It's a little bit better. I think there, isn't it? Wonderful. Thank you very much. So thank you everyone. My name is Amanda Quincy. I am one of a small number of run leaders for GoodGym Windsor and Maidenhead. So our area activator is a lady called Amy Lovell, who some of you may have already met. She's actually currently active in Maidenhead tonight, doing GoodGym and doing good deeds with a large group of people. So she'd asked me to be here on her behalf. If I can have the next slide, please. So for those of you that don't know about GoodGym, we are a group of local residents, and the idea is about combining exercise with fun and doing good deeds in the community. So we are all volunteers, and we walk or cycle or run to an event that's been pre-organised, where we go and help a community or a charity organisation. And we've helped over 90 charities across Windsor and Maidenhead. Sort of GoodGym as a background arose in London from the frustration of one individual, a gentleman called Ivo, who was frustrated about how mainstream gyms didn't really meet his need, didn't really want to go into a kind of closed room and do sort of fitness in that space, but also the rising levels of loneliness around the country. So he started delivering papers to a local gentleman in Hackney, a guy called Terry, in 2007, and that forced Ivo to commit to get out of the doors and go for a run, because he'd committed to deliver this paper. And Terry was quite a lonely individual, and so that gave Terry this regular source of friendship and sense of community. That changed over the number of years, so it became a not-profit organisation. In 2011, large groups started to meet, and it officially became a charity in 2015. Windsor and Maidenhead GoodGym started just on the cusp of the pandemic. And so our area activator, Amy, had an amazing challenge to try and create a community where no one was allowed to be within 2 metres of another person. But she kept that going, and now we have a huge source of volunteers who help people across Windsor and Maidenhead. So we have a regular session on a Wednesday evening in Maidenhead, and then on a Thursday evening in Windsor. Could I have the next slide, please? So kind of what are good deeds, and why are they important? So good deeds are amazing for people's well-being and mental health. We create a community, we bring people together from the local community, and there's an enormous sense of personal and group achievement from the things that we do. All the members are local residents, so all of the people live in and around Windsor and Maidenhead. Sometimes we get visitors from Slough or further afield, but generally it's people that have kind of lived and grown up in the area. The types of projects that we help, we've got the baby bank, so sorting through baby clothes, doing lots of litter picking, keeping the area clean and tidy. You can see lots of sometimes heavy lifting around with the skips and the removals. But we have sort of 3 main types of work that we do. So every week, without fail, once a week in Windsor and then in Maidenhead, we have weekly runs to community projects, where we will meet at a venue, run or walk or cycle a short distance, do the project for about an hour and a half, normally in the outdoors, and then we all go back to the starting point, and there's a little bit of fun fitness in there as well. We also have small groups that meet in the daytime, so there's one tomorrow morning in Windsor if anyone is free, at 10 o'clock meeting at Spittal Cemetery, just to continue doing the clear up of the graves there. And we also do isolation visits, so people who need one-to-one support and a bit of befriending. We go around for cups of tea. If I could have the next slide, please. So not only do we do lots of good deeds, but we actually get an enormous amount of skills out of it as well. So you can see there we've learned flower arranging. We are very, very good painters and decorators. We did some embroidery and stitching work where we helped create a mural to celebrate Maidenhead. We always help out at the Maidenhead show, so putting everything up, helping stall holders get everything down at the end. And we do a lot of outdoor fence painting. Probably most schools in around Windsor and Maidenhead at some point have had a bit of a lick of paint from GoodGym. If I could have the next slide, please. So most of our sessions are outside. It's not exclusive, but we generally do work in nature parks, gardens. We've done work in some school gardens in Windsor. The one in the middle, the person in the very middle, that's our area activator, Amy, who is more than happy to get wet and dirty in the name of a good deed. And so we work with the Waterways charity cleaning, and we've done so lots of tasks around nature reserves, keeping the paths clean, putting lots of mulch down so that the paths then are usable for people, local residents. Have the next one, please. So as I said, we walk, run or cycle to the task. It's never more than a couple of kilometres each way. We do a bit of a fun fitness session there. So it's a really nice way for people just to get a bit of exercise, a bit of outdoor spirit, a bit of togetherness. And then we do the activity and then we come home. The bottom left is actually a group of people, and we ran the Maidenhead Easter 10 as a GoodGym community for Windsor and Maidenhead. And this year will be the 3rd year that GoodGym for Windsor and Maidenhead is being represented. It's a huge national running event called Endure, which takes place in Reading. So that's not compulsory, but it's just a nice part, that kind of fitness builds, and we've seen lots of people increase their fitness just from doing GoodGym. Next slide, please. So whilst we do get fit and we do good deeds, and the charities that we work for are all very important, it's not all serious, as you can see. So we get creative with our fitness exercises. So the sumo wrestlers, we were helping out, I think it was a school, tidy up, and they had these amazing sumo outfits, and they said it was okay if we gave it a go. So we had a bit of a wrestle and a match. And we also celebrate achievements. You can't quite see it there because there's a name covering, but on the far right hand side at the top, there's a GoodGym cake. So we have milestones. If you do 50, 100, 250 good deeds, we celebrate that locally with lots of cake. There we go, thank you. And on the far right hand side at the top, you'll see a lady called Sheila, and she won a national award for the amount of good deeds that she's done. So that's a national GoodGym award. She's an amazing individual. Thank you. Next slide. So the sort of power of GoodGym, we know that sort of 7% of the UK population experience loneliness, and actually there's around 10% of young people between 16 and 25 actually experience loneliness. So this is a great way for people to join a community and do good deeds, get a sense of value, but also we get to help our local community and keep it clean and tidy and fresh and available for people to use. So I've got a very quick quiz and some questions just at the end. And the next slide, thank you. So do you have to be a runner to be part of GoodGym? No. Yes, message has got across. Brilliant. Yeah, next slide, please. Thank you. No, you don't. Absolutely. Anyone is welcome. We always have a walking group on our Wednesday and Thursday session. I've been injured for a very long time, so I'm technically not a run leader at the moment. I'm more of a walk leader, but everybody is welcome. Next one, please. Do you have to have a DBS check? So do we think everyone needs a DBS check? No, absolutely. So you only need the DBS if you're doing the one-to-one isolation visits when you're going into someone's home. Obviously, then you would need to go through an extra level of security. But other than that, no, just join us. You can come at any time. Next one, please. Do you have to pay? No, absolutely. There is an option to donate, but no, it is entirely free. We want people to take part in what we do. We give our time, and that's sort of the value of what we can offer. And I think there might be one more, Lawrence, and then. And do you have to commit a certain amount of time? No, absolutely. This is great. So that's one of the really wonderful things about GoodGym is it's an organisation that you can pick up and put down as your life ebbs and flows, as we all have busy lives. So you can do a Sheila and do 4 tasks a day, every day, or you can come and join us and then be busy and not join us again for another 4 months. So I think that should take us to the end. Oh, no children allowed. There's a question, are children allowed? Unfortunately not, due to our insurance and licensing. You have to be over the age of 18. But that is really one of the only restrictions. No men. So it's a question. Men are very welcome.
We've got one here.
We have generally more women than men, and that seems to be a universal thing. And we would love more men to come. So please think about joining with us, or please just recommend us to your friends. People that have joined us, do stay. And we've got a great community of people, young and old. I think we have the youngest around 18, and I'm not going to reveal the age of our eldest, but it's a very, very broad spectrum of people. So that's just the last information about how you can join up. So you can go to goodgym.org, and then you can look for your search under your local area or search under an interest, and then you could just turn up at one of our events. Helping isolated older people is something that obviously with the DBS check we'd have to go through in a little bit more detail with you, but the option's there for everybody. So I'll pause there and then see if there are any questions.
Thank you Thank you very much. So does anyone have any questions? If you could speak in your microphone when I ask you to, and if you could introduce yourself as well. So
hello, I'm Heidi Berry. I'm a resident. I'm also a big fan of GoodGym because we run the Maidenhead show in your town. Could you just outline to us where, if I wanted to join you on a Thursday in Windsor, where it would be and what time?
Absolutely. Yes, so Windsor normally meet at 6:15 or 6:30, and we meet outside the, I don't know if I can say names, outside the Indian restaurant that is opposite the Pirate Park, near the small boots and the Thames Hospice. It's outside the Binoy. So we normally meet there. Occasionally, depending on where the task is, we might specify another location, but it is generally there. But if you go onto the website and if you sign up to join a particular event, if for any reason anything were to change, you would be notified, but all the details would be up there. Oh, and I should say, sorry, the tasks normally last for about an hour. So the total time probably about 2 hours with the travel there, the bit of fitness, the event itself, and then the travel time back.
Councillor Devon Davis, is there a way of suggesting tasks to GoodGym?
Absolutely, there is. So if you go onto our website, you can make referrals to us, to Windsor and Maidenhead, and that comes through to what we have, a task force. So with our area activator, the run leaders like myself, and a core group of people who are on a task force who essentially do sort of the free management of Windsor and Maidenhead GoodGym, and we can review those and then get in touch with you and then see if it's the right thing for us to do. So we help not-for-profits, charities. We don't help privately funded organisations, so we work very much within that voluntary sector and charity space.
excellent. Are there any other questions?
I've got one.
Oh yes, Paul. Thank you. Ask a question. Thank you.
Sorry. Hi. I must apologise because I think I was contacted by Amy right in the middle of our Christmas programme last year. And so really interested, really keen. We've got a lot of projects I think you might be able to help us with. A lot of the questions I had actually have just been asked. So I think there's two more. One was, does your help extend to local authorities? I know you said charities and non-profit, but I just wondered. And then in terms of the numbers of people you have every week, because I think you're saying you're based in is it Dedworth, really? You said Pirate Park, so from Dedworth. But how many volunteers a week do you normally attract, or does it depend on the projects that are sort of put forward?
It's a good question. The Maidenhead side has been running slightly longer, so that does attract larger numbers at the moment. So I'd say in Windsor, we're regularly getting 5 or 6 volunteers. But having said that, we ran a session helping Clua Green First School do their eco garden, and I think we probably had about 18 good gymmers turn up for that event, because it was something that was very close to our hearts, and we managed to get a large number of people. So it's not impossible if we have notice to get larger numbers there. But at the moment, Windsor's probably around 5 or 6, but hopefully if we spread the word through meetings like this, we can get more people. And as I said, although we're based, we say sort of Dedworth, the Binoy, we're virtual. So we use that as a meeting point because it's quite well known, it's easy access for people, but also for those people that need to lock bikes up or perhaps do need to drive if they're coming from Maidenhead, they can use the car parks that are nearby there. But we can change our starting location depending on where the task is.
Brilliant. And my last question is do the projects, do they have to always be at 6:30 on a Thursday, or are you flexible depending on the project?
So I'm sure that my colleague from Maidenhead Town Fair will say, yes, we can be flexible. We have a regular night, so it's a Thursday night in Windsor for activities that we can do that fit around that time. That's generally where we get the most volunteers, and certainly in Maidenhead, that's what we've seen, the pattern, because it's a regular time. People always know they can commit that in their diaries. Having said that, depending on what it is, we're very flexible. So we do sessions
all throughout the week, at weekends. And we've helped out at the Bolters to Bray sort of the swim in the river, and I think we started that about 5:45 in the morning. That's not the norm, but we are pretty flexible.
Great. No, thank you. I'd love to talk to Amy more and stuff. So yeah, sounds like a good scheme. Thank you.
Excellent, thank you. Any more questions? Another question? Yeah, go ahead.
Sorry, it was just one more sort of observation that links to that. I think that GoodGym is central. I'm hoping I'm saying this accurately, in the Maidenhead town team that are really active in cleaning up Maidenhead and doing activities around the town, and that Robin's pulled together with Jack Douglas. I'm just wondering, Paul, if that's something that you should consider trying to replicate for Windsor. I think there's the appetite there. Well, certainly I would support something like that. So I think it's a really good model, and I believe GoodGym have been really, key to getting that up and running.
Yeah. Oh, sorry, Paul.
I was going to say, we were only just talking about it this afternoon. Sorry. I was with Robin today, so we were talking about it today. So definitely.
Yeah, definitely. I've been single-handedly cleaning up graffiti around Edworth, it seems. So we would definitely like some sort of team like they have in Maidenhead, because I think we've got a lot of volunteers. It's just coordinating them and things like that, and working out a plan for getting rid of it. So yeah, I think that would be good. I think we've got another question from Councillor Wilson.
Thanks very much, Chair. Not so much a question, just a comment. Really, just think this is a fantastic initiative. It's a really excellent way of getting people active, as you say, and helping out the community. It is one of those things that is needed at the moment with the state of everything. I know my good colleague Councillor Davis has been along fairly regularly, yeah, it's on my list to join at some point as well. So I look forward to that whenever a Thursday frees itself up. But no, fantastic initiative. So thank you for organising it.
My pleasure, and now we'll look forward to seeing you at one of our events.
Okay, thank you very much. Thank you for joining. I know that you need to go now, so but thank you for joining our meeting, and you're always welcome at the Windsor Forum. So we'll move on now to environmental health powers relating to pest control. Something that the residents asked for at the last meeting was a discussion on pest control. It seems we've got a big issue, particularly with rats in Windsor. And we're now going to hand over to Obi Oranu. I hope I've pronounced your surname correctly, but I'm sure you'll tell me if I haven't. Who is going to talk to us about some of the things that we can look for. And then we'll open it for questions afterwards. So over to you. Thank you very much.
Good evening, Chair. Good evening, everyone. Thanks for inviting me. My name's Obi Oranu. I'm the Environmental Health Service Manager at RBWM. So just to give some context, Environmental Health looks after commercial services. So that's our business regulation. So our food businesses, health and safety, private water supplies, and animal licensing. I also have residential services that deals with our private sector housing team, unauthorised encampments, houses in multiple occupation. And I'm also responsible for the environmental protection team, and they deal with statutory nuisances. They also deal with air quality, contaminated land, and local authority permitting for pollution. So for things like dry cleaners, for example. So thank you for inviting me to talk about environmental health and what we can do in terms of pest control. I'm aware of a couple of issues in parts of Windsor. And I think it's fair to say that we need to try and look at how we can work to solve the problem collaboratively, because there is an issue with some silo working. But what I'll do is I'll walk you through what we do in environmental health in relation to pest control. So in short, there's a piece of legislation called the Prevention of Damage by Pests Act 1949. And that places a duty on each local authority to keep their land free from rats and mice, essentially. So as a local authority, environmental health enforce that essentially on landowners and occupiers. So where there's private land, or where there's a food business and there's a curtilage in which there's nesting, or there's evidence of harbourage, Environmental Health can take enforcement action to deal with those issues. And we've got a range of different types of notices depending on the problem. So, for example, if it's within a food business, we can serve what's known as a hygiene improvement notice. And that can require the food business operator to put in place procedures to control pests. If we come across an infestation that presents a risk to public health, we can ultimately close a food business. Where there's a pest problem in private rented accommodation, we can take action against a landlord to deal with those pest problems, especially where they may have a house in multiple occupation and there's some communal bins. So we can deal with that, and we can also deal with pests on private land as well. So where there's pest issues on private land, we can find who the owner is, and then we can serve a notice for them to eradicate any rats or mice found on that land. Now, what we can't do is we can't, as Environmental Health, take action against ourselves. So where there's a problem on council-owned land, Environmental Health have no formal powers to deal with that. And I think one of the challenges we have is that Environmental Health, yes, we can deal with certain pest issues, but we can't deal with the issues where the harbourage or the nesting is on council land. And so we've already made contact with some colleagues internally to see who is responsible for that, because we're quite keen to avoid passing the buck, as it were, because we're quite aware we've had complaints and we're dealing with those where we can, but where it's council-owned land, we have no powers to deal with that. The problem's exacerbated by the limited refuse receptacles that are available, especially where there's multiple occupied buildings and residential dwellings. And most of the food businesses you get across most cities and towns were never originally designed to be food businesses. So you have retail shops that have been converted into different types of food businesses, and invariably they don't have the space to put in place, storage rooms where they can put their waste receptacles and they can be sufficiently lidded until they're taken out for collection. And because commercial waste tends to be collected outside of sort of normal office hours in the evening, many operators will leave their refuse on the side of the road, and that obviously, of course, attracts pests and provides food sources for pests as well. So I think that's something that, as a local authority, we need to look at our waste collection colleagues and see what we can do to try and address that problem. But essentially, Environmental Health can deal with pest issues in food businesses and on owner-occupiers and in private sector housing. I'm happy to take any questions.
Yeah, gentleman in the blue jacket, would you like to come and speak in the microphone? Thank you very much. And if you could introduce yourself, that would be lovely. Thank you.
Yeah, sorry. Random question really based on what you said.
Could you press the button?
Sorry. Random question based on what you
Could
said.
you introduce yourself?
Yeah, David Waddleton, resident of Eton.
Thank you.
How do you actually deal with it when you have the problem? All you've talked about is your powers. But do you actually take action in any way? Do you poison the rats? Do you trap the rats? What do you do?
Thank you for the question. So as Environmental Health, we don't actually carry out the baiting or the eradication ourselves, but typically what people do to eradicate rats is that you need to essentially remove one of the three key issues of food, water, and shelter. So it's a combination of cutting back overgrowth, shrubbery, and also a combination of bait treatment. That's typically what's done to eradicate rats.
Sorry, just wanted to go. If you bait them,
Could you press the microphone, please?
sorry.
That's fine. Thank you.
I beg your pardon. I'm not familiar with this technique. If you bait them, does that not put poison into the food chain?
Well, I mean, pest control contractors have experience in making sure that bait boxes are secured. So what tends to happen is it's usually in a secured box in which the rodents will run into, consume the bait, and then go back to their nest. So it shouldn't be accessible to things like dogs and cats and things like that. They're usually, I don't know if you've seen them, those large black boxes with holes either side.
Okay, so it's not possible for random creatures. It's still not working. It's not possible for random creatures to actually feed on the dead rats.
Well, I think with pest control, what tends to happen is that they will carry out regular visits and they'll tend to pick up and remove and dispose of any dead carcasses. So it wouldn't be a case of they just visit and bait and not return. It's a continuing program of inspecting and revisiting and checking the bait takes and disposing of any carcasses that are found.
Yeah, I appreciate that. There are a lot of rats. There are more rats than there are humans around. Thank you.
Thank you. Yes, lady in the corner, thank you.
Good evening. My name's Sue Evan and I'm a resident of Easton Wick. So basically, can I just ask, so your role is actually just an advisory role? You don't actually take any action, you just pass advice on and someone else does the action?
No, not quite. So we enforce the requirements on landowners and on food businesses. So for example, if we were to go into a food business and we were to find an uncontrolled pest infestation, we can take formal action to eradicate, asking them to eradicate that. And similarly with a landowner, we can serve a notice on them requiring them to take action within a certain timescale. Now, if that notice isn't complied with, we can consider prosecution.
Please may I ask something else?
Excuse me. Yeah, can you just wait your turn?
Oh, sorry.
Yeah, it's okay, thanks. There's a lady just next to you. If you could ask your question, then I'll come back to you. That's okay.
Hello, I'm Krisha Ahmed. I'm the owner of the business Piara of Windsor, which is a retail cafe business in the Coach Park in Windsor. Could you tell me who is actually responsible for pest control on council-owned land?
So we're not entirely sure who internally, and that's something we need to clarify. There are different teams that are responsible for things like open spaces and parks, for example, and we presume that they would be responsible for dealing with pests on parks. But in terms of other council-owned land, we're trying to establish that and set up our own internal mechanism for making those referrals. We totally accept that at the moment, the handling of complaints about pests on council-owned land is insufficient, and we accept that they're not being handled correctly because it's not clear who does do it. And so it's coming through to environmental health, and like I said earlier, we don't have any powers to deal with it.
Okay, thank you. That's interesting because I guess we're lacking a parks officer in Windsor at the moment, so maybe that's part of the issue, perhaps. But we'll take that back and liaise with OB and find out. Yes. So the gentleman in the blue jacket.
Thank you very much. My next reference is towards pigeons. In the high street in Eton, we have a major problem with pigeons. And their dropping is permanently on, scarring the walkway, the pedestrian walkway. How does your office deal with pigeons, please?
So if pigeons are creating a nuisance, there are powers in which we could look at it from a nuisance point of view, but it does also depend on, where they are contaminating and fouling and the impact. So if it's fouling someone, a commercial premises, it'd be down to that commercial premises to look at, deterrent measures, be that netting or spikes and so forth. I know that where I've worked previously, they've used birds of prey on a sort of monthly basis to fly around the area to try and deter the nesting of pigeons. But it's difficult to give you a specific answer without seeing what the problem is. So if there's a particular problem where there's fouling and it's causing people to slip and fall, that may be something we can look at, and I'm happy to come back to the forum on that. If it's buildings that are being soiled, then that will be down to the owners of the building to address.
Okay, well, if you'd like to make a visit to Warren Properties in the morning, you'll see it's covered in droppings outside. And the pigeons are coming across to their rooftop from other properties. And they obviously are feeding on food from nearby restaurants.
Who owns that building, sorry?
That's in Eton High Street, right?
Yes, That is in Eton High Street, yes, about half, isn't next door but one, or next door but two to the Eton Town Council office. On the west side of High Street, travelling north.
Sorry, I'm not aware of the location. I'll have to come back to you on that if I may.
That's okay. Is that something that's been reported by the council report it function? Yeah. Have you?
Sorry, I'm not a member of the council. I'm just reporting it as an Eton resident because it's of a continuous concern and problem to the people who live in that immediate area.
Sure, no, I understand, but have you reported it to the council? So
I'm
your
just
council,
using, I'm using this forum
Okay.
to bring the attention of a gentleman who's speaking in front of me on a screen.
Sure, okay.
Thank you.
No worries. So you have actually two of your local councillors here, so I'm sure they'll take it away and liaise with OB on your behalf. So thank you.
Fantastic. Thank you.
Yeah, Councillor David.
Hey, I've noticed anecdotally that the rats and rat nests seem to be around overgrown vegetation. You did allude to it in your first answer. I was wondering what responsibility Tivoli have towards keeping the vegetation trimmed back enough to prevent rats, and also do we have to fill in rat nests we find?
Sorry, I didn't quite catch that. Could you just repeat that, please?
So, do Tivoli have a responsibility to fill in rat nests? And do we have a responsibility to keep the area tidy enough to prevent rats from living there?
Okay, thank you. So as a local authority, we have a duty to keep the land free from rats and mice. So if it's a council land, we have a responsibility to keep it free. In terms of Tivoli's responsibility, that's I don't know about their remit specifically, so I can't answer for them specifically. But as a local authority, we do have a duty to keep land free from rats and mice.
Okay, thank you. I've got a question as well. I know there's, a couple of roads in particular, Bridgewater Terrace in Windsor, that has reported a big increase in rat infestation. And I think a lot of that is coming, from the river and from Alexandra Gardens as well. So yeah, I guess it would be interesting to find out what we're trying to do to alleviate, some of that. And I think, to be honest, every household in Windsor is experiencing some issue with rats, even if they don't live near the river. So, I do think there is a big issue here as well. So, so it'd be good to have a plan, or to see a plan on what we are going to be doing, even if it's putting down more of these rat traps and things like that. Councillor Wilson.
Thank you, Chair. Yes, actually, three questions have come to mind. The first, Obi, appreciate your honesty actually in saying that there isn't currently clarity within RBWM as to who should be responsible for pest control on RBWM land, and I'm pretty sure all the councillors here are quite concerned by that. I certainly am, and I wonder what action we can take to try and actually get clarity on that responsibility, because I think that's really quite important. So as I say, I appreciate your honesty. I'm wondering how we take that forward. Whether that is a place issue.
Yeah, of course. Thank you for the question. I mean, like I said, we've had meetings this week within my service trying to clarify who is responsible. So we've put together a list of where environmental health are responsible, and we're making contact with various internal teams to determine what responsibility they would have to deal with rats on council land. So like I said, we are acutely aware that there doesn't appear to be a clear pathway as to who would deal with it and how it can be reported. So we are discussing that internally, and I'm certainly happy to share that, a list of the contacts once that's been put together.
Thank you. Would I be right in thinking that would fall under Councillor Coe's remit in terms of the cabinet?
So in terms of environmental health, yes, Councillor Coe is our portfolio holder. That's correct.
Okay. All right. Thank you. And then the second question, you referred just now to the fact that the local authority has a duty to keep its own land free of rats or of pests, and I understand that your department was primarily enforcement. So the question is, who actually acts on that duty?
I don't have the answer to that question, I'm afraid. I would have to come back. Like I said, in terms of enforcing it on businesses and landowners, it falls to environmental health, and that's what we do through complaint investigation and our inspection program. In terms of what is currently in place to proactively do that on council land, I can't confirm who that is at the moment.
Okay, thank you. Maybe that rolls up with the first point around who the responsibility. Yeah.
Yeah.
Just finally, slightly different. I know, as people have said, a number of residents have contacted certainly us in Eton and Castle, and I just wonder if there's any general advice you might offer residents in terms of practical steps they can take, possibly the management of their own gardens, if appropriate, to reduce the likelihood of rats appearing. I appreciate. I think various people have commented you're never more than 5 yards away from a rat or something like that. So they are around. But are there any practical steps you could suggest for residents?
Sure. No, it's a really good question. So I think the first thing is there's 3 essentially principles. You need to deprive rats of food. So you need to make sure there's no food source. And it's really difficult when you've got to put your bins out or your bins are overflowing, but it's really important that you don't provide them with a food source. That includes internally and externally as best as possible. That also includes removing any harbourage. So where you have long grass, it's probably advisable to cut that as low as possible, because what rats are very keen on is looking for somewhere to shelter and to hide. And so if there's no way for them to hide and to nest anywhere, then you remove that ability. And it's also important to remove any water sources. So if you've got any leaking external pipes or taps, to have those repaired, and also just to prevent any entry into your property, and especially around any pipe work and any brickwork. So it's a good idea just to have asking residents to have a walk around their property just to see if there's any obvious gaps or damage in which rats can potentially get in. But it's a difficult problem because there's an abundance of food waste in towns and cities generally. But that's the best advice I can give. And if you do have a problem, it's best to get a professional pest control company in to help do a survey to identify any potential sources that you may have missed, and then to carry out any necessary treatment as well.
Great, thank you.
Yeah, if come to you first because you've already asked a question, and then we'll come to you if that's okay. Thank you.
Hi, it's Heidi Berry again. So 2 hats, one from just an observation from a business perspective. Craft Coop has a shop within Windsor Yards in Windsor. We just as an observation, it's become the service yard area is now like a place I don't even want to go anymore. It's really, really unpleasant. I'm assuming that Windsor Yards, as the landlord, is responsible for dealing with the issue.
That would be correct, yes.
Okay, so that's something as a tenant of the landlord we should be flagging to them, or do I flag it? Can I flag it to you?
I think it would be best if you as the tenant would flag it to them, and any sort of legal agreement that you have with them in terms of keeping housekeeping and pest control, that you may have something in your agreement that says that they are responsible and they have to undertake certain functions with that.
Unfortunately, I don't think we do, but generally I'll
Okay.
raise it. And then just from a personal perspective, I back onto what I assume is council land in terms of Spittal Cemetery, and just hearing that poor old Amanda, who's just said that they're going to do a cemetery clean-up, we've definitely had a problem, and it's really intensified over the last few weeks for those houses that are coming from Spittal, back onto Spittal Cemetery. So the rats are getting cheeky now and coming to our back doors. So once again, it sounds like it goes back to the same problem of who owns that problem to deal with it from a council perspective. But should we therefore, do you want to have these incidents reported? Should we be using the report it function just so that you can get an understanding of how bad the cases are?
Absolutely, that would be really helpful. We do get people reporting it, and that's really helpful. And like I said, where we can deal with it from an environmental point of view, we do. But like I think I've been quite candid in that there does seem to be this a slight issue as to where, the issue about council-owned land and who actually deals with that.
I just wanted to say, would it help if we're reporting it? And that's what,
Yeah,
you know,
yeah.
how much the issue is. Okay, that's fine. I'll let the neighbours know. Thank you.
Thank you. The lady at the end, thank you.
As a business owner that has a business, including a food business that backs onto Alexandra Gardens, I'm very concerned what you said about Bridgewater Terrace. What I would like is for the council to cut down all the hedging and the foliage that they planted close to our business, so that we have completely flat land and there is no harbourages for the rats. Who do I go to try and get this put into action?
So, like I said, we're in the process of ascertaining who is going to be responsible for dealing with issues on council land. So I'm happy to report back, certainly to the chair and to the councillors as to who is responsible for that. So I'm sorry I can't give you an answer today, but I can commit to giving, to coming back to you, certainly the chair sometime next week on who is responsible for that.
I mean, I find it incredible that we're actually having this discussion, that nobody actually knows at this point in time who is responsible for pest control on council-owned land. This has been going on for years then, and nobody knows. All these years, nobody has known who was responsible. It just seems incredible that we're in this position now.
I think we're all quite shocked by it, to be honest, and that's maybe why there's been such an issue. I don't think this is a new issue that's just came up. I think this has been a historical issue. Is that right, Obi? This isn't something new.
I mean, since I've been at the Royal Borough for 2 and a bit years, and I think there's always been certainly been an issue with pests, and like I said, where it falls to environmental health, we do pick that up. In terms of a clear referral mechanism for where it's council-owned land, like I said, that's something that we do need to address, and I'll give you a commitment to do that.
Thank you, and you do have the right people in the room here, because you've got some of your local councillors, you've got lead member for Windsor, so we do have the right people in the room, so we will address it. So thank you. Is there any more questions? Well, yes, gentleman in the blue jacket.
Yes, may I go on a tangential issue, but it's connected with pests, and that is who's responsible for all the various little waterways and cuttings that we have all around this area, especially on the Eton side, and with the recent flooding in January, February, which would have promoted rats and the movement of rats. Who's responsible for keeping these waterways clear, both the banks clear and the waterways themselves, please?
I don't have the answer to that today, but I will find out who that is.
I think Councillor Davies, do you know?
Sure, it's actually the landowner's responsibility by riparian ownership, so it's almost certainly Eton College, Eton Town Council, or we residents.
Oops, I had heard that Thames Water had offered to do it, but now they're in financial difficulties. They may not be doing it, so that might cause further complications.
Recently at the flood liaison group meeting, they did commit to clearing out the weeds twice this year, but nothing else.
Okay, Councillor Wilson.
And just to be clear about what the Thames Water offer is for this year, that's specifically the Roundel and the Bovely streams, which are the main water courses that carry the effluent from the sewage treatment works to the Thames. Other water courses are not impacted by that, but they would, as Councillor Davis says, fall to the immediate riparian owners to maintain.
Okay, thank you. So I think that concludes our questions for you, Obi. Thank you. It's been really useful.
You're welcome.
And we will continue to work with you on finding out, where we can find out who owns the issues where it's council land. So,
okay.
We will do that. So thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you.
You're welcome to stay, but you can also leave if you wish.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Take care.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Bye.
So we now welcome Paul Roach, who's our town manager, for an update. And Paul, I think we did have one outstanding action on the minutes from the last meeting about the improvements to lantern lights. I don't know if you've got an update on that just before we begin, just so we can close that one off.
Yeah, no, I can. Apologies. I did get some communication with the lighting team, with regards to all of the lanterns that had up until that point been identified as faulty. I know that they have started their program to make sure the ones that were, I suppose, quickly identified at the back end of last year have been fixed, and I've already received reports from. I know we had a number of lanterns around the Guildhall Island that were constantly out, and we had a separate business meeting with those businesses, and that was one of the first things they raised, was constantly not having light on certain streets. So I know that they have been repaired. There are still some outstanding. So I know that the ones along the lanterns along the in front of the church consistently, sort of, whilst they've all been replaced for whatever reason, I don't know if it's a connection problem, and we've recently had the lighting on the bridge. Whilst all the lights are new, there seems to be some connection problem with having them on permanently. So I am picking that up with the lighting team. They have produced quite a comprehensive list of all of the lights that need to be upgraded to the new LED form. And unfortunately, with the lanterns, it's not just a simple case of switching out a bulb. The whole lantern structure, the whole physical lantern, has to be practically replaced because of the size of the aperture inside needs to be bigger. So that program has started, and I know that they are looking to try and get through that, certainly in the coming year. And we've also had discussions with the lighting team about replacing some of the old bulkhead lights on Thames Street High Street, but they are probably going to be a more longer term problem because there are going to be issues with upgrading them based on the current fixing. So it may well be that the fixings need upgrading before you put a very heavy lantern on it. So some positive news. But as I say to everybody, please report if there are lanterns that are out, please report it. It may not be that it's because the bulb's gone. It could be just a timing issue or a connection problem.
Next, Councillor Wilson, I think, wanted to step in.
Yes, thank you, Chair. I just wanted to comment that I've noticed, having reported a number of the lights on Barry Avenue have been reporting those sort of off and on for the last couple of years. I think it got to the stage about a year ago when there were quite a few out. I walked down there the other day and they're all on, and that makes that firstly a lot safer, but also a lot nicer. So to thank the obviously whoever's been organising that and the contractors that have done that, because that looks a lot better now.
Can we wait? Can we leave questions, or is it about the lanterns? Is it specifically about the lights?
Yes, it's specifically about the lights
on
on Eton Bridge. The Eton Community Association reported to whomsoever, I'm not one of the officers, but I just sit and listen, the issue with Eton Bridge lighting a year ago, so back in 22, I think it was, November 22. And I noticed that it's still very dark on one side. So you have continuous wheel traffic going two-way, you know, on electric bikes and what have you, and it's an accident waiting to happen. I just wondered what sort of urgency you're giving to this issue, please.
Yeah, Chair, so I know that the Eton lights on the bridge have come up more recently. Certainly the team have been out several times to repair or fix the vast majority, and I think from the last report I had, I think they were all still, the vast majority were working. I think there were 3 or 4 that seemed to not want to come on. The last communication I've had with the highways team or the contractor is that they're going back to the manufacturer because they think there's something fundamentally wrong with those particular units as to why they're not coming on when everything seems to suggest they've got power, they're on the correct timing, and they're set to the correct color, because I know that they can change color, but they've done as much as they can with those lights. But the last image that I had received, the vast majority were on. It was only sort of a handful that were off.
16 individual lights not working and 11 pairs of lights not working as of last weekend.
Okay, I think Councillor Wilson's got a comment here.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. Just an update from my perspective. I've been following, I think, probably the same email chain that Paul is referring to. I obviously picked this up from the Eaton Community Association a number of months ago, quite a few months ago. I did go over the bridge at 5:29 a couple of days ago, and all of the lights were on, double. And I came back, just went and run up and back, came back at 9:05, and obviously some timing had kicked in, and then most of the lights were on single, but there were, as the resident says, 3 or 4 that were completely out. So I did report that back, and as Paul said, they are following it up. So it is very much something we're aware of, and the problem seems to be a little bit deeper than sort of a simple job, unfortunately.
Okay. So thank you for clarifying that, Paul. So yeah, we look forward to hearing your update. Thank you.
Yeah, hopefully Lawrence has got some slides. Can you just go to the next slide? Thank you. I think I did promise at the last meeting I presented two different sets of footfall. So we have the springboard data footfall, which really reports on footfall on Pest Street alone, whereas the data that we now receive from Visitor Insights covers the whole of Windsor town centre. So this graph really shows the last 4 years based on the whole of the town centre, and moving forward, I'll be using that data to report to the group in terms of sort of visitor numbers to the town centre. We can drill down into this. So if there are particular areas, I think we've got different clusters. So we've got a St Leonard's Road cluster, a Pescud Street cluster, a Guildhall Island cluster. So if we needed to, and it was requested, we can provide sort of a bit more detail on specific areas. But this table here sort of represents all of those clusters together, representing the whole of the town centre. So unfortunately, the data for April hasn't come through yet, because it goes through a process where they make sure that I don't think I mentioned this the last time, it sort of monitors GPS signals. So if you're someone that has a phone, a watch, a laptop, and you carry them all with you, we don't want to record that 3 times. And so that's the technology is sophisticated enough that it can track sort of 3 items in the same location, and makes the assumption that that is actually one person as opposed to 3 individual. So that takes time to wash itself through the system. So I hope that if our next meeting is towards the middle and the end of the month, I'll have the most up-to-date information. But unfortunately, up until today, we couldn't get the updated information for you. So this relates to March, and it shows that certainly for March, having had a fairly poor start to the year, we saw an increase of around sort of 20% on footfall from the same period last year. So it shows there that we had 251,000 visitors more than we did at the same period in March last year. And you can see from the graph there, the green line there is just tracking where we are with regards to this coming year. And you can see the other thing I'd said I think I'd do was we were always constantly referring to 2019. Effectively, we've dropped that from our data sets, because actually we're in a new world now. So at the moment, we've got the last 4 years, or 3 years if you include 2024. So you can see where certainly in 2022 and 23, where the new baseline is for the town centre, and we're currently slightly tracking above that at the start of the year. Peak hour, again, generally that doesn't tend to change too much, but round about between 12 o'clock and 3 o'clock is the peak time usually for the town for the number of visitors. Next slide, please. All right. At the last meeting, again, I think I committed to providing some better detailed information on car parking. And what you've got here to the left, we've got detail up until March. We're still waiting for April's data to come through. But what that table shows you is the list of all of the car parks that currently operate that we collect information on for Windsor. You can see the three, I suppose, best performing car parks or busiest car parks, River Street, Victoria Street, and the Windsor Leisure Centre. And they constantly peak above sort of 190% capacity. So very well used car parks throughout the month. And then the blue sort of represents this year's figures compared to the same period last year, which is the orange figures. So generally, generally in terms of car parking usage, for March went up compared to last year of about 8%, which again reflects a little bit of what we've seen in the footfall figures for March as well, which despite some of the poor weather we had in February and March, has been quite positive compared to the rest of the country. And then on the right, you'll see just the breakdown and percentage of usage across all of those car parks. So if this group feels that that is a useful piece of information to have, so I'm not suggesting that maybe the percentage usage is necessarily needed every time we meet, but certainly the performance of each individual car park is probably more useful for this group. But just to show you the sort of spread throughout the town, and really reflects sort of the, you know, what are our busiest car parks in the town centre. What I don't.
Paul, Councillor Wilson's got a question, if that's okay.
Thanks, Chair. Yes, Paul, that's a very interesting slide. That's really good to see that, and it's quite interesting to see the variation between the various car parks. I know Victoria Street is one of two that has decreased year on year, which is interesting when that was the only one, I think, of that list where the charges were held flat. I mean, might possibly correct me if I'm wrong, but I believe that's the case.
Yeah.
And actual question, when you say car parks in the town centre achieving over 190% capacity, what does that mean? Because I would have just intuitively thought 100% capacity would mean it was full all day. So can you just explain?
Yeah, it's an average. It's an average. So we take the capacity of the car park, the number of times it's been used, and then there's an average. Obviously, there's an average that you work out for each day of the month that space can be used, and then you get your sort of capacity figure. So it's not perfect, but it just gives you a sense of, you know, how busy those car parks are. And yeah, it's not 24/7, but obviously it's during those periods that the car parks are generally in use, rather than, from, 12 midnight right through to 11:59 the next day. It's a sort of a general average, and it's something that we've started to use to look at to try and sort of ascertain when we start to think about what car parks need more attention or maybe need more promotion, or don't need more promotion because they're at capacity, and actually we should be trying to direct people to something that already is well over 100% capacity during those busy times of the day or the weekend.
Just sorry, I won't labour the point, but just mathematically, are you effectively saying there that basically means that two people are using a space in a car park on average across a day?
No. So it's the capacity of the car park. So say, for example, you've got River Street. So I'm going to say 133, 33 spaces. So in terms of the numbers that we've got now, so for River Street, we've got, I think it says 11,000 times it was used. So you take that number, divide it by the number of spaces, which gives you a sense of how many were used, spaces were used during the month, and actually sort of get a better sense in terms of that capacity of 133 spaces, how many more times was that used that day. So it won't be 2 spaces a day, it will be, maybe 5, 6, 7 spaces throughout the day. But it's just about giving us a sense of how busy that car park is. But it is all averages. It's not a specific number. It's about average uses throughout the month of March, based on the number of spaces that we have and the number of users that have used those spaces.
Okay, all right, thank you. I'll leave it there, maybe pick that up from you offline. But the bar chart is certainly very useful. So that's very clear as well in terms of just the data. Thank you.
Yeah, it's good to see as well, because, you know, we get a lot of negativity on social media that says people are avoiding the town centre because of the car parks. So I think this sort of proves that that's not actually the case. So that's good to hear.
Thank you. Next slide, please, Lawrence. So in terms of vacancy rates, again, this is a new slide because the way that we're collecting data is slightly changed. So what you've got there, blue number, is the total number of units available currently in Windsor town centre in total, generally ground floor retail space units. This doesn't cover offices or anything like that. The orange bar is for the total number of those units that have been let or are actively in use. And then obviously the grey bar relates to the number of vacant units. Now, they don't always tally up because we've got some units that may not be vacant, they may be under development, or perhaps, you know, they may not be in full use. So the numbers don't always add up. But that gives you a sense. It's stayed fairly stable for us for the last 12 months. We have seen a drop in the last month. So we've had a number of units come back online. So we were at around 8%, 9% the last time we reported this. So which is pretty good compared to the regional and national average. National average is around sort of 13.9%. So we are doing better than average, or certainly better than the rest of the country. And I do expect in the coming months, we have got a number of units that are still under development and will come online shortly. So potentially we may see that number drop even further in the coming months. So I've made a note there at the bottom there of some more recent openings that we've had. We've got Leo Mancini, Ben & Jerry's more recently in the old Aunt Annie's unit, Build-A-Bear unit in the old Jules unit in Windsor Hall Station. Hopefully you will have seen that 24 High Street is now being renovated to become Trail Finders. And then Itsu is going into the new, the former Halifax unit. So we've had a lot of movement and a lot of positive movement in terms of empty units. In terms of Windsor Hall Station, we are aware that the Harrington's unit is now is likely to come under offer soon. So that will hopefully come online in the coming months once a new unit's gone in there. Innertook have taken up the old Valerie Patisserie unit, but they've moved out of their unit on the Guildhall Island. So there's sort of like a balance there. We also have the old Barclays Bank unit that is now under development. Again, we expect that to come online in the coming months. The other thing that I reported, or I think I made reference to, and I've been asked again about it, was the Heart and Garter Hotel. There is some positive news with the Heart and Garter Hotel, with potentially a new owner coming in to take that unit. So again, the details of that will come forward soon, but it means that hopefully one of our largest hotels in a very prime location will be back in operation, which is something that we've needed. So those that remember, that went, the Heart and Garter closed actually during COVID, March 2020, and hasn't reopened since. So yeah, looking forward to that, and hopefully we'll bring back that part of the town to a very, very large building. Next slide, please.
Sorry, Paul, can we just get a couple of questions? There's one from Councillor Wilson. Oh.
Thanks very much, Chair. Yes, thank you, Paul. Just a question about the geographical scope of that. So the number of units you're referring to is 417. Is that what's included and what's not included in the town centre? Because So I guess I would actually be quite interested in the whole of Windsor view, which would obviously include St Anne's Road, and then the sort of the shopping areas.
Yeah,
along
so
with-
that so it includes that 417 includes Guildhall Island, High Street, Thames Street, Pescott Street, the two shopping centres, St Leonard's Road, Datchet Road, River Street. It also includes part of Goswell Hill, William Street, Oxford Road East. So pretty much all of the main trading areas of the town centre, all the way down from so Thames Street, all the way down from Barclays Bank, all the way down to the bridge. So it pretty much covers all of the businesses, trading businesses in those areas. So pretty extensive.
Thanks. I guess a question would be: is there merit in looking at the smaller shopping areas outside of the town centre? So I'm thinking again down the Deadworth Road. Open question.
Yeah, no, I have on occasion reviewed vacancy rates. So I do have a separate chart for that. I'd have to have a look to see when the last time we did it. Certainly we reviewed it last year, a bit like Ascot. I don't do it every month like I do Windsor, because Windsor is so busy, as is Eton. So there's a separate one for Eton as well. So I can do that if that's something that the forum would like to see.
Yeah, I think it would be good to look at certainly Deadworth, because this is a Windsor forum and it's the whole of Windsor. So yeah, that would be really useful. But no, this is good. It's good news. Thank you. I think there's another question from Mr. Webb.
Hi, I'm John Webb, a local resident. Paul, on a previous occasion, you mentioned that you could track where people have come from via the GPS.
Yes.
Could you tell us whether there's been an increase or decrease in locals coming to Windsor in terms of footfall and parking?
Sorry, I missed the last part of that. Tracking, I didn't get the last part of who you said. Did you say?
Are you able to track whether there's been an increase or decrease in the number of RBWM residents who are coming to Windsor?
Oh, right, yes. So
Residents versus visitors, yeah.
In terms of parking and footfall.
So, and I think this was raised at the last meeting, and I did have a look at this. So yes, if you recall, I showed a map which had dark blue and light blue for categories all over the UK, where showing where people were coming from to the Royal Borough. And there is one for the Royal Borough, but it covers the whole of the Royal Borough. So in terms of the specific detail about if people are travelling, say, from Maidenhead to Windsor, I don't think we're able to get that detail, because it's because the catchment that I show on the plan, whilst in terms of the detail of the individuals with their GPS in the town centre, when it goes to that catchment part, it's only capturing people entering the boundary of the borough as opposed to those areas. I will come back. I will check that though, because I know that I had some questions after I had a look at it, and said, actually, can we get any more detail than that? But if you look at that map that I show you, the map only shows the catchment map only shows the borough boundary and not the smaller boundaries that we follow, which is yeah, not helpful. But I will ask that question and see if we can get any more detail.
Very much.
I
No
can't
questions.
see if there's questions because it's so small. If there isn't, Lawrence, can we have the next slide? So yeah, so just recent activities to report. If you go to the next slide, please, Lawrence. Obviously, we've recently had the Coach Park bridge reopened at the end of last week. Next slide, please, Lawrence. Just a couple more images of some of the detail that has been done. So I know this has been a particular issue for a number of of residents and businesses. So I'm glad to see that it's now open and operating fully. And so hopefully, fingers crossed, we will have a great summer and they will have a much better welcome to Windsor than has been the case for the last few years. Next slide, please, Lawrence. I've added this because I'm not sure how many people know about the developments of Windsor Yards car park. I don't get the data on the Windsor Yards car park, unfortunately. I have been trying to push the new owners Q Park. But these are just some images of some of the levels that they've finished renovating or refurbishing. Part of their refurbishment also includes 13 new electric vehicle chargers, most of which are located on the ground floor. The most recent update that I've received from them is that these works won't be completed until October, the beginning of October, end of September, beginning of October. But they are moving as quickly as they can to deliver that. And hopefully by October, Windsor Yards car park will be brand new, certainly looking brand new and far more welcoming than the old car park. Next slide, please. It's my final slide, just really looking forward to a number of key events taking place over the next month or so. Most of these dates I presented in previous presentations, but just so that members know the key events that are coming up. We've obviously just come out of the horse show, which from reports that I've received from the event team was a very good show. And I'm waiting for the figures on the attendances for this year, but they were certainly predicting up to 50,000 people over the 4 or 5 days that it operated last week. And we're now sort of recovering most of the ground. So there's a lot of work being done because we obviously had some fairly inclement weather towards the end of last week, and certainly on the Sunday, on the last day, I think right at the end. So a lot of work's being done now currently to restore Home Park Public in particular and parts of Home Park Private to make sure that they're ready for the summer season. And I drove past it today, and it's already, the dry weather that we've had today has actually benefited quite a lot. So certainly there was cricket being played today, so clearly that's not affected by the show from last week. The one correction.
Don't forget, got Rock the Wreck as well on the 6th of July.
That says the 2nd of November. That's an error. We always hold the pumpkin party on the last Saturday of the half-term weekend. We're probably going to move that to the 26th of October, so that it's on the first Saturday of the weekend of half-term. So that date I do need to update, and we've just changed that today, this afternoon, having looked at it. And that's it, Chair. Thank you.
Thanks. I don't know if you heard me. I said we've got the 6th of July. We've got Rock the Wreck as well in Deadworth. Another date in the diary. So,
apologies. I don't know how that's come off my list, because I know that was on my list from the last meeting. Apologies.
no worries. Right, we've got a few questions for you, Paul, if that's okay. Start with Heidi. That's good.
Hi, so just one of the dates. Sorry, Paul, it's Heidi Berry, resident Craft Coop Hats. One of the dates for the diary I thought was Embrace Windsor, 25th, 26th of May, which is the beginning of half term, for the amalgamation of the 2 shopping centres and all the family activities that are taking place.
Yes, you are absolutely right, and I have that on my list of things to include. I'm still waiting on the detail of that, but yes, you are right. There will be Embrace Windsor weekend on that. I think it's the bank holiday weekend, isn't it? But it's on the Saturday and Sunday.
It is on bank holiday weekend, yes, that's correct, yeah. And then the other one was just an observational question from me. If the coach park is at 26%, and they haven't been able to get over the footbridge, how have people been getting into the town, bearing in mind we've got a rat problem? Sorry, I was just throwing that one out there.
Well, the use, yeah, so the usage numbers is based on the number of coaches that come into the coach park. So people have been being directed via, there were two routes that they were being directed to. One was via Goswell Hill and into the shopping centre. And then if there was an issue with any of the lifts, there was a no-step route which directed people down Barry Avenue and up via Thames Street. So that's how people were getting around that. Some groups were going straight up Boots Passage across Goswell Road and up that way as well, but that wasn't a signed route. That was a route that, you know, most guides, if they know their way around town, they would take their groups that way. But I know that all routes were being used quite regularly during the refurbishment.
Okay, thank you. I mean, I've just from a business owner perspective, having attended the tenants meeting between Windsor Yards and Windsor Royal Shopping maybe about 3 weeks ago, the business has been so badly impacted in that part of town across Windsor Yards especially. We can't, and also the fact that the Q Park had not notified anybody about closing half the car park, which I believe is still ongoing, as you've mentioned, not till the end of October. So the impact on that part of town has been detrimental almost. It's really been bad. So anything that can be done to support that side of town, I'd really appreciate it.
No, definitely. I mean, we certainly, during the works, we definitely offered all of the businesses opportunities to use our visit marketing team. And as I say, we tried to make sure everybody was clearly signposted. I think we did some work with signposting additional businesses that weren't signed before in and around the arches. So it's a difficult one because we knew it was a difficult decision as to whenever we did those works was always going to have an impact on somebody. And we, you know, after a lot of consultation, the months that were chosen were felt to be the less disruptive of all of in terms of the time of year. So yeah, it's unfortunate, but unfortunately with the level and the length of the works, it was inevitable that there was going to be some disruption, which we couldn't avoid.
Thank you. A couple more questions. So the lady at the end, if you'd like to just say your name and then ask your question. Thank you.
Hello, I'm Prisha Ahmed, the owner of PR of Windsor business in the Coach Park, and Paul knows who I am. And he knows I'm very, very angry and upset about various aspects of the footbridge refurbishment works. They were originally supposed to take place starting on the 2nd of October 2023 and finishing the first or second week of February 2024. This would basically have taken us through the winter period. By changing the start date to the 2nd and 3rd of January 2024, it meant that the end date was the first week in May 2024. Now, the tourist season in Windsor begins in March. So effectively, by changing the start date to the beginning of January, March, April, and the first week of May, the footbridge was closed for that 2-month period. Now, great play has been made of, you changed the date because you wanted to avoid the Christmas trading period. But there is no Christmas trading period from the Coach Park. Your figures are coach numbers in the months of November and December will show that there is very, very few coaches arriving those months. In addition, the coach occupancy is probably a half or a quarter full in those months. In contrast, if you look at the coach numbers in March and April, and these are nearly always full coaches, we're talking about a 20-fold difference between March and April compared with November and December. Now, the council was in receipt of these figures. Why did the council decide to do these refurbishments work at a time when they had the knowledge that the financial damage to many businesses, including our businesses in the Coach Park and many businesses in the areas that Heidi has already discussed, would be far more severe by changing that start date to January?
So I know we've been through this a number of times, and I think it's, I mean, for most councillors and members, they will know that there was a considerable effort made when we announced. In fact, the dates that you referred to actually were the second set of dates, because the original date that was considered was to start the works in the middle of the summer last year, and clearly there was a feedback from businesses that said no, we need to move it back to, you know, potentially that date that you said in terms of finishing in December. Following that second consultation, there was a lot of businesses that felt that those dates were going to be far more detrimental in the run up to Christmas for those businesses. And I appreciate your business doesn't necessarily operate during those sort of November, December times, but there was a wider consideration that the council had to make with regards to the businesses that are open at Christmas and that see the footbridge as their customers' gateway to the town centre. So the decision was then made to move that date further back to the January date that we now know. And we said at the time, you know, the works were going to be 17 weeks. So it was always going to cover almost 2 seasons. So whether we started in the winter and ended in the spring, or where we started in summer and ended in autumn, it was always going to be a long period, because that's the information that we were getting back from the contractors. It's unfortunate. It wasn't that it was never going to be perfect. And I think we acknowledged that, and we said we needed to respond to the wider sort of town centre feelings with regards to that bridge being out during the Christmas period. Hence the reason why we came with the slightly hybrid version, where we refurbished the lift in the first part of in November. So we still sort of did those works in that sort of end of the year, with the larger, more substantive work starting in January. So it's, you know, it was never going to be perfect, and I think, you know, we've had to respond and listen to as many different people that have a stake in that footbridge, and felt that, yeah, the number of businesses that would have been disrupted during the Christmas period was far more than would be the case if we started in January, when the numbers again were fairly low. But I accept that, yeah, March, April, more April and May, we know that figures start to go up. And yeah, in an ideal world, I would have loved the works to have finished by the end of March, middle of April. But the nature of them and the contract that was set out was that we couldn't do that.
Okay, thank you. Do you have a follow-up question?
Yes, I do. You said that you consulted businesses widely. Now, who is responsible for doing this consultation with businesses? What methods do you use to contact those businesses? And why, as a business of 40 years in the coach park, directly in front of the works that are taking place, and probably the business that will be most adversely impacted by changing the start date to the beginning of January, why did you and nobody from the council inform us that this consultation of the change of start date was underway?
So in terms of the consultation, what we had was a number of people feeding back to us about their concerns over the original start dates. And so, as you know, we then held a meeting in this very room with about 30 businesses to discuss the nature of the works and to go through how, you know, what that would impact and how long they would go on for. So those individuals were part of that group that we were consulting with. In terms of that list, that it wasn't a list that we created. It was based on those people that had come forward expressing their concern, and we said, okay, that included both of the 2 shopping centres and members of those 2 shopping centres, and obviously yourself as tenants of the coach park. Now, in terms of pre that and why you weren't contacted, I can only apologise. That's not. I was only involved at the stage that we needed to speak to businesses and let them know what was going on and the best way forward. But yeah, we had started the consultation, but in terms of how that came about, that was more sort of, I would say, almost organic, in the sense that people that had raised the issues and concerns, we said, okay, we need to move on this and try to get a wider sense from other businesses as to the impact and the nature of what those works were going to do to those businesses.
Okay, yeah, do you have another question? I mean, I don't think this is completely Paul's area of responsibility, so it's, you know, but
Well,
go
I
ahead.
think what I need to say is when you're consulting businesses, you're saying this was almost like an organic movement. So in other words, businesses that came forward to want to discuss this with you, you included in this consultation. What I'm saying is that is not sufficient moving forward. That all businesses should have the opportunity to take part in this consultation. And unless they know this consultation is going on, how on earth do they know to be included in that consultation? I only found out that this decision to move the start date to the early January was actually being contemplated by the council because my daughter had seen a Facebook comment. And once that happened, I contacted the council by email, including yourself and Andrew Durant, stating what I felt was going to be the impact, not only on businesses in the coach park, but businesses certainly in the Windsor station concourse. I didn't receive any reply from anybody in the council. The only person that replied was Councillor Amy Tizzy. And this is completely unsatisfactory. It is not true that so many businesses were contacted. It just seems to be those that contacted you. You then have this two-way conversation with them, and other businesses were left completely out of this. And this is completely moving forward. This is not a satisfactory way to involve businesses in decision making, which may very seriously impact on their businesses.
Yeah, I mean, I do sympathise with you, and I'm sorry that, you know, this has affected you. We'll take it on board, and, you know, I think we'll probably take this offline. I think this is something, you know, probably that we can discuss with you offline, if that's okay. Yes. Thank you very much. And I bet you're glad that it's open now. So the lady in the corner, thank you.
Sue Evans, local resident. One observation is I used the bridge yesterday and the signs are still up saying it's shut. So you might want to remove them. Going back to the car parks, you say that the leisure centre is one of the busiest in the town. Well, obviously it would be, because you've got people constantly using the leisure centre for their parking. So really that isn't a true reflection of the actual usage of that car park. Obviously it's probably the busiest if you take it overall, but I just don't think that's a true picture, because it's obviously people using the leisure centre, not coming to Windsor to shop or eat or whatever.
I would say that some people do use it to visit Barts Island and to picnic on the island and to visit some of the river-based attractions. So I wouldn't entirely agree with that.
Okay, Mr. Bowden, would you like to come forward and ask a question?
Good evening, John Bowden, a resident Windsor town. Paul, good evening. I've got a couple of questions here. I was gazumped by Ms. Evans here about the validity of the car park at the leisure centre, which is basically for the leisure centre. And Councillor Wilson mentioned about the 190%. Is it possible instead that we can get, by vacancy of the car park, the amount of income that is generated? Because if a car park space is used for an hour or 2 hours, or if it's just used for the basic hour, right, and it keeps on being in rotation, the sole figure that we're particularly interested in is the income, because as we know, it's either by residence usage or greatly outnumbered at the weekend by visitors, not necessarily overseas visitors, but from the UK and the local counties. Especially after a TV article on the castle, etc., they tend to come and have another look at it at the weekend if the weather is good. So can we have the income of the Windsor car parks per month, right? And then if not, I will have to do an FOI or something to measure it against the income from the previous year, hence the increase is covered, and also the volume of vehicles in Maidenhead versus Windsor itself. The other point I was going to make was the lift, according to Facebook, was out of action the following day when the fire brigade turned up to extradite 6 people from the lift. And I will make a determined effort to change my phone to a Scottish address on Northern Ireland, so I'm not tracked all the time walking around picking up the faults in Windsor.
Okay, in terms of the income, I would have to defer to the chair and as to whether or not they're happy with that detail to come to the group. And also, I mean, it's I don't receive the income total myself. That's the parking team provide me with the figures that I present. It doesn't include income as part of that. We do get the prices, so yeah, it's not inconceivable we could work out how much income is derived from that. But in terms of income, what the tables show are the car parks that we currently obviously manage. It doesn't cover any of this on-street parking. So just providing an income may not provide the clarity that you might want in terms of income from car parking. But I defer to the chair, and I'll happily take that to the parking team to see if they're happy for that information to be provided every month.
Okay, we'll take that away and let you know. I mean, the thing is, yes, obviously you can obtain that information through freedom of information. So we will take that away. I mean, I know probably where you're coming from is the fact that obviously the council increased the fees for parking. A lot of that was to plug a gap in the budget, you know, to prevent us from becoming bankrupt. So, you know, I think that's, yeah, and that's part of the reason that we had to, we didn't want to, but we had to do that. Also, something I would be interested in finding out is how many residents are using their 1 hour free car parking as well, because you can use that in Elmer Road and Alexandra Gardens and Victoria Street. So, you know, it'd be useful to see how many people are using that, because that is still available. It would be lovely to increase that at some point, but at the moment, you know, obviously we're not in a position to be able to spend that money. But that would be another thing that we'll definitely look into. So yeah, I'll look into it and we'll let you know.
I'll just mention that as a disclosure, I don't need to pay for parking in Windsor, where I live. Well, you know. Oh, that's good.
I see you nearly every day.
I know where I am every day. And a lot of other people know where I am during the day. And finally, the information is available from the parking manager or the finance team.
Yeah.
I wonder where I've got that information from.
Yeah, no worries. Okay, so yeah, that's something we can definitely discuss at the next meeting. Is there any more questions for Paul before we let him go? Yes, gentleman at the back, would you like to come forward and speak into the microphone and introduce yourself? Thank you.
My name's Frankie.
Could you speak into
Sorry, my name's Frankie Theobald's, resident of Windsor. My question was to Paul about the bridge. Given the level of disruption, is there like a planned schedule of maintenance to minimise this over the coming years?
I have asked that question, so I'm waiting for a response on that. But as soon as I get that, I'll feed that back to the group. But it's a good question.
Yeah, we would hope so. Thank you. Any more questions before we let Paul go? Okay, thank you, Paul. It's really useful information as usual.
Thank you.
We look forward to seeing you at the next Windsor Forum. So the next item on the agenda is residents' questions and suggestions for the next forum. Now, in terms of questions, these are more sort of questions that we might be able to get answered in the next forum. Not necessarily being able to answer them ourselves here and there. Yeah, if anyone's got any questions or suggestions, because we want to make this forum interesting for you. Hopefully we've kept the presentations, you know, more snappy and a bit shorter this time. So we've listened to your feedback. So yeah, if you've got any topics that you want us to cover at the next forum, then the next forum is on the 23rd of July. Then we'll try and make that happen. So does anyone have any suggestions? Yes, Lady Black.
My suggestion has arisen from an incident that happened in the coach park on the 22nd of October, which was the Monday. The weekend previous to that, there was a notice at the entrance to the coach park saying that the coach park will be closed on the 22nd of October, a Monday, and the 23rd of October. April. I'm in the wrong month, April. So I was very surprised by this. Nobody informed us that this was going to happen. And all weekend I thought, what is so vital that the coach park has to be closed on a Monday when the castle is open? There must be some major security things, something major must be happening in Windsor. So I was very surprised when I arrived at work at 8:30 at the morning, our premises in the coach park, to find a solitary man with a brush in his hand, painting the lines, the demarcation lines for the coach park, for the coach bays. That was the reason somebody in the council had decided that the coach park should be closed the whole day, which would have caused massive disruption. Over the weekend, many of the coach drivers said they've contacted their coach companies, they didn't know about this, they were still going to bring coaches into Windsor, and there would have been massive disruption. The whole of that part of Windsor would have been completely locked down with coaches. What happened in the event was that the coach drivers decided to take the law into their own hands and come into the coach park. So this solitary man with his brush was painting one side of the coach park. The coaches came in and parked in the other side. I, meanwhile, was desperately trying to get through to the council, which in itself is quite a feat, as some of you may know. You cannot get past customer services. Eventually, after an hour and a half, I managed to find a receptive person in customer services who got through to, I think it was either highways or parking, stressing that if they did not open this coach park, there is going to be chaos very shortly in Windsor. Because having one side of the coach park closed was, once one side is full, where are all the other coaches going to come that need to fit into the other side? Eventually, the coach park was opened and a disaster in the making was averted in Windsor. I informed through customer services that if the council wanted to do anything of this nature, they should use Tuesday and Wednesday as the 2 days they could do it, because the castle is closed on those days and there are very few coaches coming into the coach park. I thought they may have understood this. But to my surprise, on the 29th of October, the following Monday, lo and behold, the man came back. This time he actually had a machine to paint the lines, and he shut off half the coach park. So he's painting the right-hand side, the left-hand side was open. Very soon that got full of coaches. So where were the other coaches coming in going to go? Eventually, after an hour and a half of trying to contact the council, I was informed that whoever made this decision had decided they had left enough coach park bays open and they were very fine with the decision. This is completely wrong because the coaches are constantly coming and going all day. So what in effect happened, the man that was painting the right-hand side informed a coach driver, well, when I've painted the right-hand side, I'm going to paint the left-hand side. But by that time, the left-hand side would have all been full of coaches. So what happened is, he had to do a dodging in between the coaches. As some porches moved and a space became available, he would go and quickly paint those lines. When there was no space, he would then sit in his van to wait until some porches had moved and a space became available. Now, this is beyond force, absolutely beyond force. And is this the way that the council uses ratepayers' money so inefficiently? And do we have people and departments in the council that think it's fine to operate in this way? Councillor Amy Tizzy actually also stressed that Tuesday and Wednesday were good days to use. They ignored what she said, they ignored what I said. Bloody mindedness, they will still do it on a Monday. Now, I think the councillors need to start addressing this mentality within the council. This is absolutely unacceptable. It's unacceptable to the ratepayers of Windsor, who are going to be paying for this work that's taken much longer than it needed to have taken, and for the business ratepayers of Windsor. And I think the councillors really need to take this issue up. I've taken it up with Andrew Durant. He has apologised for what happened and said he is going to take measures to ensure this doesn't happen again. But I think the councillors need to get on top of this now, because this is totally unacceptable.
Okay. I'd like to invite Councillor Teasy. Thanks.
Thank you for raising this. Yeah, it was frustrating in the extreme. As board councillors, we all said if they had just come to us or notified us in advance of this work happening, we could have stopped it at source and said that's not going to work, because that's what ward councillors have, the local knowledge. We know these sorts of things. So obviously we reported it and so forth. When they came back on the Monday, the reason given was that that was the best day in terms of weather that week for painting, that it wasn't going to rain. Again, very frustrating. So as you mentioned, Andrew Durant, I met with him. He had expressed that he didn't want it to happen again on the Monday, and it went ahead. So there's been a definite fall down in communication. That's something that we've really seen there. He's going away to work on that with the teams to make sure that this kind of thing doesn't happen again. One of the suggestions that he made for improving things straight away is that every week we are sent a list of highways works that go on, and it just enables councillors to be able to share that with residents in their wards so that they know what's coming up for the week ahead. They're going to actually add on these sorts of things so that we can see it on a Friday and know and put a halt to things if this sort of thing crops up. So it's about improving the communication so that we can make sure these sorts of silly things don't happen again where there's a lack of local knowledge. I think that's the sort of main thing, and people being given a task to go and do, it's passed to a contractor and so forth, and it doesn't necessarily get delivered in the way we would expect it to be. So it's definitely something we are working hard to resolve.
Thank you. Thank you. So are there any other topics that people want to discuss in the next meeting? Because it's your meeting, it'd be good to have ideas from yourselves, otherwise we'll come up with things that you might think are quite boring. So, Mr. Holland.
John Holland, resident. Is the Windsor Vision going to be on the next one? If not, can we include that, please?
Yeah, so at the last meeting we had Chris Joyce join us, and we suggested that we would pick one of the items from the Windsor Vision and look at it in more detail. So yes, he didn't feel that he was prepared to do it he didn't have enough information to do it at this meeting. So yeah, I think definitely at the July meeting we'll try and get him back and we'll deep dive into an aspect of Windsor Vision. So, yeah, Mr. Haggard, would you like to come forward and speak in them?
Just to say that was on the list of other residents as well.
Okay, so other residents also want that. Yeah, okay, that's good. Do you have any other suggestions?
Can I just say I'm still waiting to hear from, I sent an email out to all the Windsor councillors and Andrew Durant and all of those about Windsor Elite Society being involved in the Vision of Windsor. Nobody, not one, replied.
Oh, okay.
Not even an acknowledgement of my email.
Oh, really? I'm
Yet
sorry.
again.
I'm sorry to hear that. But I think, yeah, definitely. I mean, we would like you to do a presentation at our Windsor Forum, I think, as well. That definitely we've got you on the list. We were led to believe that Chris Joyce had a meeting scheduled with you. Is that not?
No.
Oh, okay.
So if you believe that, he hasn't informed me I've got a meeting.
Oh, okay, we'll.
I have heard nothing at all. Not
Okay.
even a simple acknowledgement of my emails.
Oh,
around
okay.
town.
I'm sorry about that. We'll follow that up with him, and yeah, we'll definitely like to have a presentation from you at a future Windsor Forum, definitely. So Lawrence, maybe you can make a note of that. Any other suggestions? No? Okay. So the next meeting will be held on the 23rd of July. That will also be here at 6:30. So we hope to see you then. Spread the word, bring your friends. And the agenda will be published a few days before. So, any of the other councillors got any closing words? Oh, Councillor Teasdale?
Only just, Lawrence, could you ask Paul for his report to be added to the minutes, because the slides and everything were quite useful. It'd be good to have. Thank you.
Okay, so